You know, it's a good thing this is a small channel, because otherwise this would get me all sorts of lovely attention from the femme crowd. So, Count Dankula, aka The Dank, aka Mein Furry Führer, responded on Twitter this Thursday in regards to Gab banning all things lolicon from their platform. Gab took quite a bit of heat from this, as Gab tries to sell itself as a platform dedicated to free speech and expression. And, well, here they are banning various forms of artwork. Now, I'm not going to give them too much shit for that, mostly because it's been done, and I'll leave one such video down in below bar so that you can familiarize yourself with the goings-on. Now, there is of course some legal gray area with lolly stuff, somewhat in some countries, so maybe they could have gone with that and gotten away with it, but they didn't. Turbo started making it obvious that this was a morals ground thing by dragging out the usual SJW arguments, but you'll see that in the video I linked. And besides, his claim has always been that he stands for free speech, and there's plenty of other content that's in a legal gray area on his stuff, so. But he's always said that this is the hill that he will die on. Well, clearly not. Like I said, I'm not going to point too much ire at them, since, as I said, it's been done and I'm kinda short on time right now. Dank, on the other hand, and some of the others who are taking his side, did not get off so easily, because they should know better. Literal child porn. Okay, Dank, first off, in order for it to be literal child porn, there would have to actually be literal children. These are drawings. One is flesh and blood with thoughts and emotions, the other is pen and ink and digital sprites with no sentience to speak of. And second, weren't you and your dog accused of being literally Nazis? I seem to recall something about that. But, hey, you got yours, right? You got your GoFundMe and your support for being a martyr and taking one for the team and standing up for what you believe in. You know, until it was no longer convenient to you, apparently. Okay, now that we're on the same page, let's get to your clarification of the statement before I go into this. For those that don't understand what he means by futaba, he means this. It's an anime that Dank sometimes uses clips from, which features sexualized young girls. People were rightfully pointing out the clear double standard there, and he decided to respond in an obviously adult manner. Yeah, when he uses sexualized young girls, it's okay because he's just doing it as a joke. He's not one of those perverts who gets off on it. No. He's just doing it ironically. Oh, and he also follows Shadman on Twitter. Yeah, hates lolly stuff but follows Shadman. I'll let that sink in for a moment. If you don't know who Shadman is, go check him out on his webpage. Just, make sure your boss or your kids don't see. So, two women shitting into each other's mouth is okay on his Discord, but liking this makes you the filthy degenerate is what he's going with. And that's not just him. The comment threads have more than a few people stepping up to take his side on how this sort of thing is horrible and should be banned because it will cause people to go out and molest young girls, because they will inevitably put their fantasies into reality, and anyone who likes watching fantasy images will inevitably want to do them in real life, and hey, I think I've heard this line of thinking somewhere before. And this is the thing that made me want to really get into this and point this out, because I've been reading a lot of the threads on various sites and seeing all these people taking his side on why lolly should not be, and they are all, each and every one of them, SJW arguments. Every argument is one of two things. Either the argument is that lolly content will make people want to go out and do it in real life, which is complete nonsense that has been shown to be false over and over again. If anything, studies, which you can see one such below, show the exact opposite, much as they do with violence and other things in games and media. Besides, lolly as a genre was created in the heart of Japan, and one look at their rates for sex crimes will pretty thoroughly torpedo that. They aren't the country with the rampant child raping and grooming gangs. Now, if lolly had started in the EU, then they might have something there. Or, maybe if Japan had a Muslim population, but we're apparently not allowed to bring that up anymore. And the other argument is that it's just wrong. Somehow. They can't tell you why it's wrong when asked, but they just know that it is and thus shouldn't be allowed. This is what I call fair weather freedom fighting, and it's much more prevalent than you think. People are always willing to fight for rights when it's themselves and their rights on the block. It's when they have to fight for the rights of those they don't like that all of a sudden the totalitarians start seeming to make a whole lot more sense. Unfortunately though, most of the time fighting for rights means fighting for people you don't really agree with, Dank. But if you disagree, feel free to give everyone a Sieg Heil and march yourself off into that jail cell that they wanted to toss you in. Remember when you were exercising your free speech? Sargon weighed in on Gab as well. I'll leave a link to the whole thing in the low bar, of course, as well, but here's the highlights.
I did want to reply to this, because while Louis is technically correct, which is the best kind of correct, there are also very real and pressing political reasons why Andrew Torba of Gab, the owner and founder of Gab.ai, a platform I use, although I'm not particularly familiar with Andrew Torba himself, except for I know that he can be quite a savage on Twitter, and presumably his own platform of Gab as well. Andrew has decided to prohibit something called Lolicon. Now, if you don't know what Lolicon is, that's good. That means you're a healthy adult human, and you should remain that way.
What about all those people who like to be whipped or spanked? Are they healthy humans? How about women who have rape fantasies, which, incidentally, is a very large portion of the female population? What about water sports, or choking, lactation, pet play? Which of these are attributable only to healthy humans? What about simulating shooting people or running prostitutes over with cars in virtual environments? Are those the actions of a healthy person? Because again, this is starting to sound very familiar.
Because what it is fetishized, sexualized drawings of underage girls. So it's something that is not technically illegal in the United States because there is no victim. You know, it's a fictional representation of a fiction. It's a representation of a fictional human, and so there's nothing to criminalize really, and it's protected by the First Amendment. However, now I appreciate this is going to sound like possibly an unpopular position, but I think it is something that we have to be reasonable about. Is it reasonable for Andrew Torba to ban Lolicon from his platform?
Perhaps, perhaps not, but it's really rather a moot point. The issue is one of principle, not practicality. The issue is that they are a free speech platform that is censoring speech. You're going to try and dress it up and justify this and kind of tap dance around that. But that's exactly what you're doing, is you're just dancing around the real issue. It's rarely ever reasonable or practical to stand up against the establishment. When you're on the other side against the would-be oppressors, it's never reasonable to stand up. It's just necessary. It wasn't reasonable to stand up for blacks during the civil rights era, where mobs could and would do violence and even kill both the blacks and whites who stood up and spoke. Would you have stood up to the freedom riders and said, hey guys, let's be reasonable here? Yes, I'm exaggerating the magnitude of this, but it makes my point. You stand by a principle or you don't. If you only stand for something when it's reasonable, then you don't really stand for anything. That's why I'm so careful and considerate in regards to what few moral stances I do take.
Especially, as Louis points out, in the light of having all manner of racism, anti-Semitism and Nazism, all that, whatever kind of hatred you want on the platform because of its position as a free speech platform. And honestly, I kind of see why Andrew would do it. I'd probably be thinking about making the same decision if I owned Gab as well. And yeah, I hold the same kind of free speech extremist positions as Andrew Torba.
Yeah, it seems you do. That's my problem with you.
And Louis. And Louis's complaint is that this is hypocritical, as you can see from the description here. He pushes moralizing onto a platform, and he finds this hypocritical because Andrew Torba is a free speech extremist. I agree. I think that the way this is justified is by essentially pointing out that it's a very hot political climate at the moment, and not many people know what lolly is, so when when they try and describe it to someone who doesn't know what they're talking about, they're going to say child pornography.
And, of course, the way to fix that misconception is to sweep it under the rug, right? You say that most people do not know what lolly is or understand otaku culture, and so might make the wrong assumptions, and that it's a minefield in this political climate. Well, how will banning it from a supposed free speech platform change that? Of course, normal people won't understand if no one shows it or tells it to them. Of course, there will be a minefield in the social political landscape, because it's not allowed to be there. It's a completely circular argument, Sargon.
And there's no doubting that that is going to be taken out of context by particularly unfair media and various activists online.
But having people saying kill the kikes and posting swastikas can't? Which is also illegal in various countries, might I add. Like those in the area that you live in. Last August, Microsoft threatened to pull Gab's service because of some anti-Semitic posts. Hell, as I'm writing this, I'm looking at articles talking about how the Pittsburgh shooter was a major poster of hate messages on Gab. This has nothing to do with Lolly, and they are already being taken apart. At least they could have had their principles intact. Even if they don't have a real excuse, they'll just make one up anyways. You've seen this happen over and over. So what? Your suggestion is to just give in and maybe they'll keep you around as their trained little monkey? What happens when the next concession is demanded? And the next? It's not like we haven't seen this happen every frickin' time. Oh, and incidentally, Sargon, you might want to consider the interesting implications of what you just said that you seem to have missed. If Gab has decided to be selective in how it enforces free speech, you'll notice that it was the cartoons they tossed out the door as being unacceptable, and not the swastikas and the calls for race wars. That should probably concern everyone.
On misinformation alone. So, like I said, I'm not making a judgment about the people who consume this, although I have to say I think it's degenerate weeb shit and I find it gross.
Yeah, I don't want to pass judgment on them, but it's degenerate weeb shit. Okay, look. Let me address this for a moment. This is for all you guys, the Sargons and the Danks, who are trying to go, ew, that's so gross. Guys, grow the fuck up, okay? I have been on the internet for many, many years, and one thing I know with absolute certainty is that if we went and checked your browsing history and some of the shit you're into, there'd be a long line of people saying, ew, gross as well. Everyone's sex things are gross and fucked up. That's why sex is always so funny. I may make fun of such things as I do pretty much everything else, but I don't shame people for the things they enjoy or tell them it's gross or skeevy if it didn't hurt other people. The whole trend I've been looking at the last few days where everybody, even the people who are defending it as free speech, are making a special point of prefacing themselves by saying, it's gross, the people who do it are bottom-dwelling weebs, but I still protect it, are being hypocritical, and it rings just a little bit of my lady doth protest too much. Because, as I said, I've been on the internet a long time, and I know just how prevalent lolicon stuff is. There's a reason why lollies are such a prominent feature in so many anime, that there are popular series just about having lolly waifus. Hell, I just checked Hentai Fox to see how many books they had with the lolly tag, and it was over 1,300. That's double the number of books tagged to have blowjobs in them, by the way. The same trend held true when I tested it on images on Downborough. Lolicon had 49,000 images, and blowjobs had 21,000. So Lolicon is more pervasive than blowjobs among the anime crowd. Which means, I think it's fair to say that at least some of you are not really sincere in what you're saying. But to summarize my point here, Sargon, he who is without sin. Do you really want someone shining a light of judgment on whatever it is that turns your crank?
It's not that it's not covered by your free speech laws, however...
No, however. It is free speech. You need go no further. It always starts with banning something that someone doesn't like. Always. It's always, this is disgusting. This is gross. This is immoral. This is offensive. What's disturbing is that this time, it's coming from the people who should fucking know better.
I think it is reasonable for Andrew Torba to look at the current environment and say, right, there are some things that we're actually not going to permit, even though they might technically be legal, even though there is a constitutional crisis over lolly, I guess is what he would describe it. Like, he thinks that the law this is being done under, which Louis is deeply familiar with for some reason, is unconstitutional, but it was just never appealed. The decision, and it was the guy just caved into it because he was accused of trafficking this, even though it's not illegal to traffic, and he was accused of, I don't know, some arcane trading across state lines or something, I don't know. But Louis explains it in his video, and I'll leave it in the description. And like I said, you should definitely check out his channel because it's excellent. But I really do think in this case there is a reasonable case to be made that Gab doesn't want this on it, even though it has all the Nazi stuff. Because, I mean, the thing is, it's not like Twitter doesn't have lots of Nazi stuff anyway. You know, all of the alt-right is still on Twitter, or most of them are still on Twitter.
You can find lollies on Twitter, too.
You know, a lot of them are still on Facebook. They can still publicise their ideology. So it's not as prohibited as it sounds. They just can't, like, express it in the most extreme way.
Look, you made a comment down below in your section that I responded to, Sargon. Here's the thing. You're right. It is easier to ask someone to martyr themselves than to martyr yourself. But that doesn't matter in this case. A principle is something that only has meaning when you do martyr yourself. It's trivial for a rich man to refuse to steal a loaf of bread while he's sitting back in his lounge picking the remnants of his gourmet dinner from his teeth with a golden toothpick, on the grounds that he thinks theft is wrong. It's an entirely different thing when the starving man who hasn't had a meal in 2 days as he tries to keep warm in his alleyway box. If morality were easy, we would all be morally perfect beings. It's because it requires sacrifice that we hold it in such regard when people adhere to their principles. If you're going to claim that you have a principle, then you have to be ready to martyr yourself. That's what it means. What people are saying to you and to Dank and to Gab is that you are claiming these principles. One of you in court, one in public debate and discussion, and one in the tech world. But as soon as two of you came across something that you didn't like, you punked out, and you're defending them. Thankfully, your commenters are letting you have it for what you did. And yes, it is hard to do and easier to ask, but it's Gab's time to step up to the plate, not mine. My time might come as well at some point in the far or near future. I may in fact at one point be called upon to martyr myself in some way for the cause. Will I have the scrotum for that? I have no idea. No one really does until it happens. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll shrivel up like you and Gab. We'll see. And if that does happen, you will have every right to chastise me just as much. But my day for that decision is not today. Gab's was. And so was yours. So you girls might want to stiffen your backs and strap your balls back on, because we're all going to take a lot of bruising before it's over.